I am here today at Bah Bah Blacktail Farm with everyone's favorite shepherdess, Tess. So Tess, why are we here? What are we talking about today?
We're going to talk about first aid for sheep and lambs. People ask me sometimes about favorite texts, so I wanted to talk to you about a text that I really like. Laura Lawson has written 2 books, and one of them is called Managing Your Ewe and Her Newborn Lambs, and the other one is Detecting and Diagnosing and Treating Lamb Problems. If you had to get one or the other, get this one. It has the sheep and the lamb, the ewe and the lamb. But if you're going into lambing, you should have that one too. So why do I like Laura Lawson's books so much? Because there are so many really good books out there. But for hers, I have a special fondness because I don't always have the opportunity to have one of the local veterinarians come out at my beck and call. They're busy, we're far out, sometimes they can't make it, and those things can add up in cost. So I want to make sure that I utilize my vets in the best way possible by being intelligent when I call them and having a reference that I can use in case I can't get them. The good thing about these texts is that in the back they have a question and answer, or they have a checklist, I should say. The checklist gives you a way to look at your animal, and it helps to point you to the right information that you need, so you don't have to suddenly in the middle of an emergency try to figure out, well, now where did I read about that? So when I look at a sick animal or one that might be sick, the first thing I do without any doubt is I'll take its temperature. It's always a rectal temperature. These are the ones to use. You can use the old glass kind, but these make it so simple because you just press that and then it starts reading, and it's very easy. I always keep some jelly at hand, and if I didn't have the jelly, then I would use saliva, not like that, of course, but putting it in your hand and then going like this and then putting this in. So the temperature is very important because it's a really key differentiating factor. You'll notice that it's really right here on the very top, because a symptom complex could have all these signs and symptoms and be about one condition if it doesn't have a temperature, and another condition entirely if it does have a temperature. So it's really important. So then second thing is, what are the signs and symptoms that I'm seeing? When I look at that animal, I want to see, what's its vigor, what's its mouth, what's its breathing, what's its eyes, and so forth. To use this, you look at the symptoms and signs, then you find the chart that's appropriate, and then consult that chart. You start with the questions here, and you answer those questions to yourself. Is she restless? Is she not eating, not chewing? Yes. Okay, then go to this box. So then we say probably milk fever, or also known as hypocalcemia. So then we look at page 195, and that tells you where in all these references you're going to find the information that's relevant for this particular, and they even have a little picture. And then we see the treatment, and then we see the cause, what we can do in terms of nutrition, what we can do in terms of minerals, and so forth. So it tells you every different thing. So it's a very good reference, but the most important thing is, if you're in an emergency situation, or if you're in a puzzlement and you just can't get a hold of your vet, you can systematically take a look at the signs and symptoms and then determine the chart and go from there. What are the situations that a home shepherd would run into? So I kind of did a little study about what's happened here at Bah Bah Blacktail Farm. over the last 800 or so sheep. And it was really informative for me to figure out why did sheep die. I had, in all that time, I had 18 deaths, several others that I've culled, just because of things, but only 18 deaths, and that's a nice mortality ratio for more than 450 births and about 800 babies. If you listen to this, you think, oh my God, I don't have sheep. But I can say that as your awareness of their needs improves, then your ability to prevent problems improves. So most of these kinds of things happened early on in my having sheep. And now, because of the adhering to the type of sheep that we're trying to have here, grass-fed, natural, good breeding stock, have the mothers be full grown enough to where they don't have, they're not too small to lamb, they're not too young to understand what to do with their lamb. So I've eliminated a lot of problems for myself. So those are the kinds of things that you could encounter. So quite an education. So let's look at the supplies that I find useful, especially bearing in mind what you might be faced with. You need to have some sort of safe and comfortable restraint method. I think that the most important thing to have is some sort of way to hold on the front end of them. If you have a head gate, that would be good. If you don't have a head gate, you could have a friend who has a head gate. They can lock their knees on the sheep. And if you don't have either of those things, you might use a sheep chair. I'll show you a sheep chair now. So this sheep chair originally had it had a net there, but I used an old trampoline and replaced the net with that. And that's for the comfort of the sheep. So Dad, go ahead and try this out. That's right, just back up and then there you go. And then I have you in a good position. I can trim those nails. I can examine, is everything okay with that leg? You're comfortable. You might walk.
I could take a nap right here.
Good night. Oh, that's nice. Yeah. So we can trim nails or whatever. You're a little model now, Sandy. You'll notice that a lot of the troubles that occur to sheep have to do with their digestive tract. Either they don't have enough energy, they get chilled as a baby, or they are depleted in some way, in which case I would use Nutria drench. This is oral glucose, B vitamins, A and D and E, and some amino acids. And so the dosage on that is 3 cc's per every 10 pounds of animal. So that I just kind of squirt it in, and it tastes a bit like molasses with additives. Another thing that's really helpful to have is Peptobismol. So simple, but Peptobismol. And for almost everything that creates diarrhea, this can help. So you can administer this by just putting it into the cup and then sucking it up into the syringe and then putting that into the baby's mouth. There are a couple products that you should be aware of that also have to do with digestive problems. One of them is called Innobiz, INNO-BIZ. I haven't found it, but everything I've read about it, it's like Peptobismol, only 10 times better. So if you come across that, let me know where you get it. TheraBloat is wonderful. It's banana flavored. Try some. Smell the banana. So that's for bloat. For instance, your sheep got into a lush green field that got really bloated, or they got into the alfalfa pellets, or God forbid they got into some grain or something like that where they have a frothy bloat. Another thing to have on hand is lamb milk replacement. You can buy it at your local feed store, but the Merrick's Super Lamb is very, very good. And also I think the one by Premier One Supply is very well recommended. Buy it in advance because it's going to sell out. Just when you need it, it'll be sold out. And have a little whisk like you use for whipping eggs. That's the best way to make it into liquid. Another thing to have on hand helpful is Povidone iodine. They say this recommends 7%, this particular one's 10%. And this is an antiseptic and kills bacteria and viruses and so forth. It's really helpful for any kind of injuries, but also I have this little thing that's like it's like a shot glass. It's made out of metal. And so I fill about a quarter of that and then put that on the baby's umbilical cord and tip them, let it soak in, and then tip them back. And that's a good way to make sure that the umbilical cord is not going to bring them any kind of navel ill. That's a disinfectant that you could have in contact with you or the lamb for skin, but there are other disinfectants. One of them that's really commonly known is chlorhexidine, and that's a really good antiseptic, but it's more useful for things. What I do is I take some of this and dilute it according to the directions and keep it in a bottle or a jar where I can take, for instance, if I would have trimmed your feet, then I would put this in here to let it disinfect between using it on you and the next person. Something that I like to use that comes from my background as a holistic practitioner of human medicine is rescue remedy. You get this at the store where you would buy your vitamin supplements and so forth. And it's in the Bach flower remedies, and it's for stress relief. So if I get one that's been caught, or a dog attacked it, or it's been injured in some way, it has a broken leg, first thing I'm going to do is give it stress relief. And so I open it up. It's just a dropper full. Would you like some? A couple of dropper fulls of this can really take the panic out of an animal. So that's something to have. Another little comforting thing, which is handy to have, is remember solar cane for when you get your sunburn? This is just a spray that I can spray on, and that means I'm not touching the animal, and it sprays on a topical anesthetic. We had a situation where one of my friend farmers had a ram who got in a quarrel with a porcupine, and it had a whole head full of porcupine needles. I said solar cane and tweezers. So that works really well because we didn't have to touch the animal to anesthetize it. The other thing that's useful to have is some way to warm up chilled lambs. Lambing is its own adventure. But one of the things that I found useful is to have a hot water bottle, and to fill the hot water bottle and hold it against the belly of the lamb and keep them wrapped and so forth. If you feel confident in yourself and you want to use injectables, you can get a few needles and syringes. And what is most useful in the way of needles and syringes are 3 cc or 6 cc. You know, cc is milliliter. Those two things are equal. Or these 10 or 12. This is sort of the size of 10 or 12. And that seems to be the effective ones. And then the needles, for most adults, I would use like an 18 or 20, and for most babies, I would use a 20. And if you get larger numbers, then it's a smaller needle. It's because it's gauge. But the trouble you run into is some things like A&D, it's an oil base. And so if you're going to just get a few things and you don't want to have a whole lot of different choices, just get like an 18 gauge for your adults and a 20 gauge for your babies. And that'll accommodate oil base and water base and so forth. And then it's helpful to have some alcohol, because you want to take alcohol, taking a swab, which I don't have handy, but use your alcohol and swab and clean off the top. And you want to, don't wash like this. You want to go to the middle and go around, and then maybe throw that away and go do the same thing again. I would say if you had to choose absolutely one thing, vitamin B complex. If you give vitamin B complex, which it tells a lot about in these books, it's very important for stress. It's a water-soluble vitamin, so it's excreted in the urine, so you don't have too much difficulty of thinking of overdosing. But anything that's neurological, anything that's stress-induced, any kind of, improving the ability to have an appetite, vitamin B is really helpful. Vitamins A and D are oil-based, so you want to be more specific about the weight of your animal and the dosage. And they are particularly for the immune system and so forth. Caldextro, you want to make sure about the dilution. Make sure that it's diluted to the size. Follow the directions on there. And above all, with dextrose, don't give it cold.
Why would you want to use Caldextro?
It has calcium, dextrose, magnesium, phosphorus. So if they have a real deficiency of one of those things, then that's when you would use it. And again, it's following through the recommendations there. Something that I always keep on hand is penicillin G. I don't use a lot of antibiotics, but if I get an animal that really, really needs it, I need to have it right in that refrigerator. So the other thing that is a handy thing to have on hand, besides baby aspirin, is phenylbutazone. That's Butte, as the paste, the Butte paste that you would have for horses. A lot of people who have horses keep that on hand, so that they have an anti-inflammatory on board in case they were, torn up by a dog or something like that, or if they broke their leg. That's the kind of big guns that you want to have on hand. I also use Tamiflu, which comes from my, and I still left from my acupuncture practice, and I use Calm Spirit, and these are herbal remedies, and they're pills, and I just grind them and put them in some molasses and put that in the mouth, and so I use a lot of herbal things too. Handy things to have are ivory soap, blackstrap molasses, gloves. These make life really easy. Peroxide. Peroxide is a good thing to have if you want to flush out an abscess or a wound. And so I would put it in a syringe, just suck it up, squirt it in the abscess. I can't tell you how many times I use my needle nose pliers. That's like a major first aid thing. You can take out porcupine quills with it. You can do all kinds of things. A pocket knife. Always have a pocket knife. And trimmers for the feet. The best ones that I found are Premier One Supply. So you definitely want to have some good trimmers for the feet. Those are the sorts of things that I've come up with as my kind of kit. And you'll see a lot of other stuff, probiotics, diatomaceous earth, Olvex, egg balm, utterly smooth, clear eyes. This is kind of a handy thing to have. It's Clear Eyes that you would use for horses or ponies who have, but what it is saline, and it's sterile. And so if you have need of a sterile saline just to wash something out of an eye, or wash a wound, like say, you get hurt and you want some sterile saline to wash it, it's really handy, and it's in a little container, and so it's right there handy.
bad timing.